like I mentioned, was it last night? Yeah, last night. I will be speaking on what I heard, from the women's conference. Of course, the delivery will be a bit different. But I was greatly encouraged by by all the messages, but there was one in particular that I kept pondering on and that really stuck out to me, from that conference. And I just want to give a brief encouragement based on that. So, because I think it's a message that we all need to hear, which is to wait, which is about waiting. Her title, Pastor Lena's title, was actually While in the Waiting Room. That was her title, but my title for tonight is Fruitfulness in the Waiting Room. Fruitfulness in the Waiting Room. And I will be reading from Genesis 18 up to 15, I believe. Yeah, Genesis 18 verses 1 to 15. And it says, the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat, so you can be refreshed and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered, "do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice, tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set those before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. Verse 9. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked him. "There in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I did not laugh." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." I wanted to read from the beginning of the chapter just to give some context, but we'll be mainly focusing on from verse 9 up until 15. And the title, as I mentioned, is Fruitfulness in the Waiting Room. I love planting. I'm still planting until now. And around February to May is like the period of time where you can sow seeds. Obviously, some of the fruit or veggies that you will be sowing depends on what month. So for example, in February I may have been sowing different types of seeds, but at this time, the end of April towards May, I I've been sowing okra, cucumber melons, those type of things. And fruit, veggies, those things, they do not grow overnight. Like, they take time. That's why when I see my plants and I see them growing even a little bit, I'm like, oh, my little babies are actually, they're growing. But they take time. They take time to grow. They take time to grow, and you really need to have patience. Like, you really need to have patience in the waiting. But there are some fruits, some veggies, some fruits that grow a bit quickly, that grow quicker than others. So like watermelon, they say that it grows between 70 to 90 days. Tomatoes, 60 to 90 days. My garden is filled with tomatoes, different varieties of tomatoes. But some fruit, they take much longer. So like apples and pears, they take a long time. In our garden we have a plum and a pear tree, and it took so long to grow and for there to be fruit. Now a lemon tree, for example, can take 7 to 10 years before it bears fruit. But it's amazing that something so small, a seed so small, can eventually produce something that is big, that nourishes us and adds flavor to our life. In the same way, God plants promises in our lives like seeds. And some of those promises, they come quick. Other promises, they require waiting. And tonight I want to speak about being fruitful while in the waiting room. Being fruitful while in the waiting room. I have a few points, obviously based on what I received as well from the conference, as well as a little addition of my own. But number one is be in the right place to receive the promise. Be in the right place to receive the promise. So maybe you remember what we just read in Genesis from 18:9 to 15. Sarah was in a tent. She was in the tent when the Lord's promise came, when the promise of her having a child came. She didn't know that the men were coming, but she was there. She was in that place. Sometimes the promise is connected to the position. It's connected to positioning, not just physical position, but also spiritual posture, how you are spiritually. We need to be in the right place to receive what the Lord is speaking into us. We have to be in the tent. The tent, it represents what? Intimacy with God. It represents time in His presence or personal devotion to Him. The place where you can really hear from Him. Now, it's a rhetorical question, but as we ponder on that point, where are you spending most of your time? Where are you spending most of your time? Sometimes God might be telling you, be in the tent. Show up, be in the tent. The promise may already be spoken, but we have to be close enough to hear it. Have you ever been in that situation when you're like, I don't hear God? Well, you will not hear the Lord if you don't enter the tent, if you're not in that secret place. You can't hear from someone you're not in the same room with. You can't hear from someone you are not communicating with. So we should be in the right place to receive the word or the promise from God. Number 2 is believe. Believe while in the waiting room. When Sarah heard the promise, her reaction was she laughed. She laughed. Why? Because she looked at her circumstances. She focused on the fact that she was too old. It says that she was past the childbearing age. She focused on the limitations. She focused on how logically, with the circumstance that she is in, it just seems impossible. And sometimes we do the exact same. We don't always believe in the promise because we are too focused on what we see. We don't believe in the promise that God is giving to us because our circumstances it just doesn't add up. We're just looking at the circumstances, which then what do our circumstances do? They highlight doubt. So we don't believe in the promise. We hear God's promise, but we measure it by our current capacity, how we are right now. You know, Sarah, she focused on the fact that she was old. You know, she was thinking, I'm too old. And sometimes we might be like that. God may give us a promise. We may know that there's a promise, but we may think, no, I'm too old, or I'm definitely not ready for that, or I'm not qualified. But faith is believing in what you cannot yet see. Hebrews 11:11 says, and by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. Sarah received power to conceive because she considered him faithful. Her circumstances, it didn't change at first, but then her heart did. That means faith begins in the inside. Faith begins internally before fruit then appears externally. Number 3 is check the condition of the soil. Check the condition of the soil. Many have touched soil. Maybe if you've planted, I'm pretty sure everyone has probably touched some sort of soil, but check the condition of the soil. Some soil are dry, some soil are too wet, some are just right. It's like that porridge story. I forgot what you call it. But yeah, some it's just right. Too hot, too cold are just right. But sometimes with soil, there are some that are okay and are not okay, and some that are just right. Check the condition of the soil. In Matthew 13, it talks about, it has the parable of the sower. I'm not going to read Matthew 13, but if you're taking notes, Matthew 13, it talks about the parable of the sower. And Jesus said that basically the seed is the word and the soil is our lives. And there are 4 types of places where the soil was. Number 1, along the path. Number 2, rocky places. Number 3, among the thorns. And number 4, the good soil. Now, at the moment where Sarah received or heard the promise, it was not good soil. Why was it not good soil? Because she doubted. So she looked at the circumstances and she looked at the impossible. She didn't believe that she could have children because of her age. She was afraid, and then not just that she doubted, but she even lied. She said, no, I didn't laugh, but she did laugh. It was not perfect soil where the seed was promised. And sometimes you receive a promise. When you receive a promise, you try to help, you try to conclude that it will never happen, or you try to control it in your own way. But we might not always react the best when we hear a promise because we're so focused on our circumstances. But the Lord, even if she lied, she laughed, she lied, the Lord did not disqualify her. And we know that. We've read the word, we know what happens to her. The Lord did not disqualify her, and He doesn't disqualify you. Now, the question is not whether, can God really give a promise? The question is, what condition is the soil in? When you are planting, within the soil, there are weeds. I'm going to show you guys an image just so that you guys can actually visualize it. Visualize these things. How do I... Oh, there you go. Sorry. Okay, can you guys see that? Can you guys see it? When you are planting, there are weeds. These here, yes, these here are weeds. Why can't I annotate, bruv? Sorry. Here are these are weeds, right? These are weeds. And I don't like weeds on our plant. I just pull them out, because what weeds do is they compete for nutrients. So they steal the nutrients from the plant. And weeds, they say, are like excuses. Weeds are like excuses, because excuses, what do? They steal nutrients. For example, some of our excuses might be, I'm not talented enough, I'm not made for this, someone is probably better than me at this. But excuses, they contaminate the promise. Excuses are hindrances. If we allow the excuses to take control, it steals us from believing in the promise, or even fulfilling our purpose in the promise. Now, there are also pests. So pests are like these little things right there. Those are like pests. Those are pests. Now, pests in plants, it says pests are organisms that damage or interfere with a plant's growth, health, or productivity. They typically feed on plant tissues, spread diseases, or disrupt normal development. And some examples could be like snails, it could be slugs or mites. I killed the snails. If I see snails on the leaves of my plants, that I kill them. Sometimes I pick them up and I throw them across the garden. They're killing my things. They're pests.
No, wait, what?
Yeah, I do that. And yeah, I do that. And and but sometimes pests, they hide. Like they hide. So sometimes I have to go like right in to see, because if you, for example, if you're planting like salad leaves, or like food leaves, isn't it, leaves, they like really thin leaves, like snails and slugs, so they eat it to the point that there's no more leaves. But pests, they don't build, they consume. So they take. That's what pests do. And pests are often hidden things, just like bad habits, toxic relationships, negative voices, or unhealthy influences. Those are pests. And sometimes it could also be unhealthy influences. I've mentioned bad habits, toxic relationships, negative voices, but also unhealthy influences. What do I mean by unhealthy influences? People that are bad company. Bad company can quietly destroy growth. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Not everyone around you is helping your fruitfulness." Some are like pests. Some people in your life, some things in your life are pests, and they need to just be thrown. Maybe, obviously not killed. Don't follow what I did with the snails, but some just need to be chucked away from our lives. There are also dead branches that need pruning. Now, sometimes sometimes there are things in our lives that are no longer giving life. Dead branches, like old mindsets, past pain, unforgiveness, distractions. Those are dead branches that need pruning. And dead branches, they drain energy. So for example, on tomato plants, I've got so many tomato plants, and there are extra stems, and the extra stems are called suckers. So you would need to prune. You would need to take them off. You would need to cut it out so that the tomato plant would grow healthy, so that they would produce a lot of fruit. If we never prune, we limit fruit. And God often removes what is dead in our life so that life can flow again. And then the last is overcrowding. Sometimes the things in the soil are overcrowded, and sometimes our hearts are overcrowded. We have too many things in it. We have too many plans, too many goals, too many fears, too many worries. And when everything is important, there's no space to grow. Nothing has space to grow. Sometimes God says, focus on one thing at a time. That's why the Bible even says that we should not worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow has worries of its own. If our hearts are overcrowded, how are you going to focus on the important things? If your mind is so filled with so many things, how are you going to focus on the important things in life? The Lord has a great plan for you. He has a great plan for every single one of us. We shouldn't compare our growth to the people around us. Last point, God does not disqualify imperfect people. Sarah doubted, she laughed, she was afraid, and then she even lied. Lying is a sin, lying ain't good. But God didn't disqualify her. Do you know what that's called? That's called grace. That's the grace of God. And sometimes we think that one moment of weakness cancels the promise that the Lord has for us, but it doesn't. He's not looking for perfect soil. There's not always going to be perfect soil. There has to be things done in order for the soil to be perfect, like pruning, removing the weeds, getting rid of pests. But the Lord is looking for willing soil. God can still work in imperfect hearts. He can still work in imperfect hearts. He is still faithful. So we should rejoice in the promise. If God has given a promise over you in your lives, rejoice in the promise. In Genesis 21, we see the birth of Isaac. It says, "Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him." Rejoice in the promise. God is faithful to fulfill the promise. What he has promised over you, he will fulfill. When we are waiting, the waiting season, the waiting room, those things are not wasted. You see, with Sarah, like the seed, it became fruit. It became fruit. She bore a son even at their old age. So while you are waiting, stay in the tent. Stay in the tent. Protect the soil. Remove the bad things, remove the weeds, the pests. And keep believing in the promise. Keep believing in the one who gave you the promise. Because God is faithful. The Lord is faithful to his promise. Declare over yourself, I will align myself with God, with the God of promise. He is our promise keeper. Faith is believing before seeing. And faithfulness is the result of remaining faithful in the waiting. So I want to just read quickly from Hebrews 12. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that is so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Hebrews 12, 1-3. Fix your eyes on Jesus. Fix your eyes on the Lord. He is the perfecter of faith. Place your faith on him alone. Okay, so